Good evening. This is Attorney Talib Kareem, the CEO of STEM4US, and we're very delighted that you could be with us this afternoon, this evening for a extremely interesting, inspiring, and historic conversation with women who are leading organizations in government, business, and in education that particularly deal with cyber and STEM education and jobs. It is my pleasure on behalf of an organization that works with a network of 10,000 parents, educators, and professionals, particularly in the cyber and STEM fields, to be hosting this conversation. And because I'm not a women STEM leader, I'm not going to thrust myself into that conversation. But what I am is definitely a father, a husband, a brother, and a son of women who have been doing outstanding work in the STEM and cyber areas. Even before the word STEM was coined, my mother, may the Almighty be merciful upon her soul, she was a pioneer in creating science and engineering opportunities for young people, particularly in the inner cities of our communities in Detroit, where we grew up. And as I was sharing with my daughter, back in the 1980s, when the computer density in the United States was about maybe one out of every million, one out of every 1 million homes had a computer. My mother had a grant in which she used to purchase computers for her school to create one of the first computer literacy camps for preschoolers. It was an amazing opportunity. But again, this is an example of the type of leadership that women have been undertaking and exhibiting in the STEM and cyber fields for years. Again, going back as an example to the 1980s, but as we know in the movie recently, Hidden Figures, it goes back even beyond that. And so today we're going to bring some of our own leaders, some of our own sheroes, some of our own so-called hidden figures, and share them with you. And so we want you to get ready for this conversation. Don't hesitate to like the conversation, to subscribe to the channel, and to put your comments into the comment area and questions that you might have, so our moderator can answer those and make sure that your voice is heard. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring on to the stage, if you will, the virtual stage, one of our partners, our main sponsor, and that is Verizon, to give a short welcome and brief acknowledgement about the great work that they're doing, particularly in the area of supporting organizations like ours. So without any further ado, Michelle Kober, the External Affairs Director with Verizon.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. It is my pleasure to bring remarks and welcome and support on behalf of Verizon. As you mentioned, I'm Michelle Kober, Director of External Affairs and Strategic Alliances at Verizon, and I am so proud and happy to represent and be here for this fantastic program this evening hosted by STEM4US with women leaders in cyber and STEM. Verizon, as an employer, partner, and corporate citizen, has a responsibility to address issues that affect us all. As a large corporation, we have an obligation not only to our shareholders, but to society as a whole and our communities. And that is why we are committed to making a meaningful and lasting contribution toward the next generation of women in STEM. One key way to make sure that women are able to participate is to close the digital divide. As you mentioned in your opening remarks, that we come from a time where one in every 100,000 homes may have had a computer, and we are facing a similar situation today where we have so many of our young people who are not able to access the internet and or cannot afford the internet. And that is a key barrier to getting into these STEM careers. And that is why Verizon is actively engaged in trying to close the digital divide and ensuring that our communities have the tools to participate in the digital economy and digital education. In January, we launched a plan called the Accelerating America Plan, which is our proposal for federal funding to ensure that broadband is affordable, accessible, and can be adopted by all Americans. We need policymakers to help us in this area and adopt a national, coordinated, and comprehensive strategy to close the digital divide so that our children can participate in the digital economy and digital education. Congress should provide long-term financial support for broadband, and we hope that in the next year, we can all be participant in this transformative technology that has changed the way we live, work, learn, and play. One of the ways that Verizon has helped to get women into the technology field is through a program we launched last year called Citizen Verizon, and it is to drive economic, environmental, and social advancements. Through Citizen Verizon, we are working to address barriers to digital inclusion. As school closed last year and millions of students were forced to learn from home, Verizon launched a distance learning solution that is available to school districts across the country. We are providing affordable, reliable internet access to students across the country to keep them connected to their schools, teachers, and each other while we are at home during a virtual learning environment. The Verizon Distance Learning Program is available to more than 38 million students in 40 states and the District of Columbia. The Verizon Innovative Learning Program provides free broadband connectivity and devices along with STEM-focused curriculum to 265 Title I middle schools across the country to ensure that all students have the skills they need to thrive in a digital economy. Our goal is to increase participation to 350 schools this year. Also, through Citizen Verizon, we have programs that focus on people who are not still in school, but are actually out in the job market. And we are launching a program to upskill and reskill 500,000 people over the next decade and to place 50% of the program graduates into paid jobs in technology fields within 3 months of completion of the program. Our ultimate goal is to provide 10 million youth with digital skills training by 2030 and reskilling and upskilling 500,000 of our most vulnerable citizens for the jobs of the future. Verizon is so proud to partner with STEM4US to advance our shared goal of ensuring that our communities have digital access and are prepared to fully engage in a tech-driven global economy. We are also so proud to support women in this field, and we are focused on a future that is inclusive, that is equitable, and where we can all prosper. And we will continue to work with partners like you so that together we can move the world forward. Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to the rest of the discussion.
Well, let me just say before I bring on our other illustrious guests that it was a pleasure hearing that commitment that you all are making, specifically to the numbers that you all have committed to. That is a very serious commitment. And I want to ask you, STEM4US has made a similar commitment to working particularly with companies such as Verizon to develop job-ready training programs that will allow for us to train young people, particularly in the communities that we serve, and get them ready for those jobs that Verizon might have itself. I know you guys have said, what was the number that you said by 2030?
Let me go back to my.
I think it was a huge number. I think it was like 100,000 or something like that.
It's a big number. We are very serious about this, and we made a big commitment. 500,000 of our most vulnerable citizens for jobs.
Okay, so 500,000. So I'd like to ask
10 million youth. 10 million.
10 million. Okay, right. Yes. 10 million youth. Okay, that was a number I knew it was huge. Would you be willing to work with us to at least help you guys to put the for 50 youth for the next 21-22 fiscal year? That's our quest for you all. You can take it back and mull it over, but I'm sure that if you guys got a 10 million, clearly 50 is a small number to take off your list. And if you could allow us to work with you all on that as a pilot program, I think we could scale that up.
Well, I'm so happy that my colleague Mario Acosta Velez introduced us, and we will certainly have a conversation about that. It sounds like a good idea.
Excellent. Well, without any further ado, let me bring on our other illustrious guests here to our conversation. We have Dr. Donna Cooper from PEPCO. We have Charlene Stansbury from the Office of Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. We have Dr. Joy Spraggins from the great Cyber Legacy Academy, STEM Legacy Academy. And we have also Stacy Dixon, the Deputy Director of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. And our moderator, Sharifa Maston, is, again, she must not be on a Verizon network because she's having some internet issues as well. And I know that that's not a Verizon. She must be on one of your competitors. And so we're going to blame them for the reason why they don't want to have this outstanding conversation take place. But because of the fact that we must go on, I'm going to do the I don't know, heretical job of standing in place for one of our illustrious women leaders. And I really hate this, but I don't want to, again, shortchange any of you guys, because I know you all have some great things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the questions, but I'm going to remove myself because I don't want to see my ugly mug in the midst of all these beautiful, dynamic leaders who are much better looking than myself. So what we're going to do is I'm going to, again, start by, again, going over a little bit more in detail in terms of the outstanding leadership roles that you each play. And then we'll start with some questions. If anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask of our leaders, don't hesitate to put that into the comment section. And we look forward to being diligent about asking those questions. So without any further ado, let me go into the screen and begin to show some of the outstanding backgrounds that these outstanding women have and just kind of give you a sense of who are the folks that are on this platform right now. So as I mentioned, we have Michelle Colbert, who's the Director of External Affairs and Strategic Alliances at Verizon, where she manages strategic relationships with certain third-party organizations representing various civil and human rights interests. Prior to this role, she was an attorney with Verizon's Federal Regulatory and Public Policy Group, advocating on behalf of the company at the Federal Communications Commission, focusing on wireline telecommunications, cable, and media issues. She also represented Verizon in court, defending the company in litigation. Prior to joining Verizon, Michelle was in the litigation groups in the Washington, D.C. offices of both Kirkland and Ellis, as well as Hogan Loveless. I think you must have worked with Ari Fitzgerald in that.
Yes.
Absolutely. And also Michelle, whose last name I'm blanking on it. I know she's going to take me to task, but she was one of the former bureau chiefs over the Federal Communications Commission's wireline division. And we had a great, do you remember who I'm talking about there? It may come to you.
Is it Ellison?
Michelle Ellison, right. Was it Michelle Ellison? No, not Michelle Ellison. I know you're talking about. That was another Michelle.
I'm blanking on the name also.
Before this is over, I'm gonna remember her name, and I'm gonna tell you a story about her. Talk about opening up the doors. She did definitely open up the doors for me. Nevertheless, Hogan and Loveless, where she helped clients manage litigation and arbitration matters, particularly complex commercial disputes. Her wide-ranging practice included contract disputes, construction law, healthcare and health insurance conflicts, education matters, and employment discrimination claims. Michelle continues to maintain an active pro bono practice and represents pro bono clients in a diverse range of issues with a focus on criminal justice reform. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that she was a proud product of the Howard University School of Law. Thank you. Also, we have Charlene Stansbury. Charlene Stansbury serves as the Chief of Staff for Representative Yvette Clarke, the Vice Chair of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, and also, if I'm not mistaken, the Chair of the House Homeland Security Subcommittee on cybersecurity, a very important committee post as well. Previously, Charlene served as the legislative director and counsel with Congresswoman Clarke. And before that, she served as the vice president of external affairs for a consulting firm and counsel for the Multicultural Media, Telecom, and Internet Council, MMTC, and a professional staff for the Congressional Black Caucus in the 113th Congress. Charlene earned her JD from the Florida International University College of Law and her BS, BA, and MPA from the University of Central Florida. In her spare time, she serves as an adjunct professor at the University of the District of Columbia. Again, we appreciate you, Charlene. And again, I've known this young lady since she was a fellow at the MMTC. So she has come a long way, and we're very, very happy to see her in such a leadership position. Donna Cooper is the president of PEPCO Region. Donna Cooper is the primary executive responsible for engaging in stakeholder relations with state, local officials, community leaders, and business and consumer nonprofit organizations within the PEPCO region. In that capacity, she plays a critical role in shaping policy and managing issues to deliver value to customers of PEPCO. Donna also serves as the public face of PEPCO. And as you can see, she has such a lovely face. That's the reason why they would want such a, not only a brilliant, but also a beautiful spokesperson. And she does a great job in that capacity. She's also been the policy director for the District of Columbia Council and has served in a number of other senior leadership roles, including as the executive director of the National Organization of Black County Officials Incorporated, and an assistant professor at South Carolina State University. I might also add that she is also a product of Howard University, Dr. Donna Cooper. Dr. Joy Spraggins is the CEO of the Legacy Pathway Footprints and also its founder. She's a national keynote speaker. She is globally recognized as an expert in STEM and in leadership and communications. Her skills include designing and implementing best practices, performance models, providing program and public policy analysis, and structuring substantive public and private collaborations. Again, she's also an author. And another point of interest, her son just got married about a week ago. So again, congratulations, Dr. Joy Spraggins.
Thank you.
We also have Dr. Stacy Dixon. She's the 8th Deputy Director of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. In this role, she assists the director in leading the agency and managing the National System for Geospatial Intelligence. And hopefully she will provide us with a little bit of understanding about what exactly geospatial intelligence involves. Prior to this, she served as the IARPA's 4th director after serving as the deputy director before joining the IARPA. And again, what is the IARPA, Dr. Dixon?
It's the Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Activity. So,
right.
Advanced Research Organization for the Intelligence Community.
Right. So it's like the DARPA of intelligence. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And for example, and for folks who probably are familiar with that word, DARPA is the research institute that helped to establish the internet. So we are all beneficiaries of DARPA, and IARPA, I'm sure, is also benefiting us as well. Dr. Dixon served as the deputy director of the NGA's research director before also, and she previously served as the chief of the Congressional and Intergovernmental Affairs, and then the deputy director of NGA's Office of Corporate Communications. And she was previously a staff member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and worked for the CIA. I personally met, again, Dr. Dixon before she was a doctor, but she was only a junior, if I'm not mistaken, a junior at Stanford University when we first met, while she took a semester to study at Howard University in our engineering program. And I knew she was brilliant at that time, and her brilliance has continued to demonstrate itself, and it's an honor to be on this conversation with Dr. Dixon. So again, you can see the outstanding women that we have before you today, and we're looking forward to having a really great and robust conversation. And I'm going to bring into you now our moderator, who's going to come and replace me. Again, someone who's much better looking than I am, and I'm so glad that she joined us, because I was not looking forward to again really being at all a fly in this ointment, because again, this is conversation that, in fact, Sharifa Maston, who's the CEO of Bespoke Incorporated and also co-founder, or founder rather, of Mission to Change, she has a wealth of experience in STEM and human relations management and in leadership, and she pretty much was the inspiration. Her one of our other board members, Maria Scala, an inspiration for this conversation. So again, I'm going to turn it over to Sharifa, and I said board members, but I didn't say it for the entire community to know. Sharifa is also one of the newly minted directors of STEM4US, and we're very happy to have her in that position. So without any further ado, and I'm hopeful that, again, the competitor to Verizon doesn't knock you off again. If so, we will be in the background waiting for you. So again, without any further ado, I'm turning it over to Sharifa Maston, so you can take it away, and I'm going to take myself away.
Okay, well, thank you, Talib. Sorry for that slight delay. As he said, it waited right until we were logging on just to knock me off the computer. However, I'm excited tonight. We are honored to have several women in leadership to join the panel tonight in our special conversation with women leaders. Tonight our focus is not going to be so much on policy, but pretty much on the path each of you have taken to get to the position you are in today, as well as to youth and to other women looking to be a leader moving forward. Throughout the evening, each of you, I will ask questions. I'm looking forward to your responses. I will try to switch them up a couple, and if there's one you want to respond to, please do let me know, jump in. That would be great. And we encourage those who are joining us virtually today to ask questions or make comments in the comment sessions, and we'll put those to the women leaders we have today. We are hoping that by the end of this conversation, that everyone who has joined us is inspired and leave with a positive view of women in leadership, and also to gain a knowledge of what attributes lead to good leaders and success. So without further ado, I think we should just jump right into the questions. And I think I'm going to start out with one for Michelle Colbert. While each of us have had are educated and accomplished, we've each had a different path as part of our story. How did you get to the seat of leadership in which you now sit?
My path is one that's extremely unexpected, and so I would say to people to be flexible and pivot when you need to. My first 2 degrees are in music. I'm a trained opera singer, and My goal from the time that I was in high school, I went to Duke Ellington School of the Arts in DC, through graduate school and after, was to be a professional opera singer. And my plan was to grace international stages and sing full time for the rest of my life. I did that for a little while. And then I decided that I wanted to change. I wanted to do something different. So I went to law school. And that is when the career that Talib mentioned when he was reading my bio, that is when that career started. And I completely stopped singing. I focused on my legal career. I left the law practice and now am in a policy role at Verizon. And I also still sing. So pre-pandemic, I was in the middle of a show at the Kennedy Center. We were performing Don Giovanni and it got shut down during the pandemic. But I straddle both worlds. I have a great time in both. And I encourage women to do everything that your heart desires. You can figure out a way to fit it all in.
Mm-hmm. You know, that is excellent. You know, and actually, Michelle, as I was reading your bio, I looked at our similarities. I actually went to school for music education and classical performance.
Awesome.
So, and actually, you know, so even for me, even when I joined the Army, I thought Army band was where it was going to be, and music was my whole career. So I truly appreciate where you're coming from and understand that, and wanting to keep you know, both sets of the lives, you know, equal, right? You know, not giving up something that you have a passion for, as well as doing other things in your life. Let me see. How about you, Charlene? How about you? How did you get to where you are today? You know, working for the Congresswoman.
I wish I could sing like you and Michelle, but Michelle's advice is key. If you would have told me 10 years ago that I would be a lawyer working on Capitol Hill, I probably would have laughed. But I thought that I would be in business. And when I was in high school, I participated in a program called Inroads. And it was during the recession. I started to work. Working in insurance at State Farm. Not that insurance is a bad company, but it just wasn't cutting for me personally. And I had a dear mentor that used to keep telling me, Farland, you need to consider law school. It's not just if you want to practice. A lot of people in public policy and elected officials happen to be lawyers and use their law degree for public policy. So I think it wasn't until the recession and I started looking more into law school that I was working full time. I studied for the LSAT on the weekends. Then I got into FIU, College of Law in Miami, got involved with the National Black Law Students Association, and everyone had worked on Capitol Hill or interned on Capitol Hill. So I kind of did it backwards. Once I graduated from law school, I was a 29-year-old intern on Capitol Hill working for Secretary Fudge now when she was the CBC chair. And I'll never regret that decision, just moving from Florida to DC to be an unpaid intern, because within 5 years, I became the chief of staff.
Oh, very nice. That's excellent. You know, and I think those are the stories of how we get to this path is very important for others to hear. You know, while it might not have been our path, you know, thought what our future would hold, it's absolutely wonderful to hear how all of a sudden, you know, I always say it's like a diverging, sort of like a path, you know, going through the woods, right, left or right, you know, and taking a chance on something that wasn't your actual, your thought for what your life was going to be. I think that's what brings it around and makes is a great story for your career. But also in that, I think I want to ask a few more people, because I think these are interesting and it's great for people to hear how you have gotten to where you are. So Dr. Dixon, could I ask you the same question?
Absolutely. So it's funny. I've heard two things today in the previous stories that are very, very true to me. One was the decision to change paths, and one was involving a recession. So I was headed to a career in academia, got my master's, got my PhD, and then had a change of heart. And I had a change of heart right before the recession of 2002. So I was all of a sudden not looking at academia, looking at industry when industry wasn't hiring. But the government was hiring. And I'm from the DC area, came back to DC, rediscovered this sort of government intelligence community, national security mission. And a family friend who happened to be working in it, I was asking him, are you all hiring? Because at that point I was just looking for anything. And they were. And just engaging with individuals in the community, wanting to be a public servant, wanting to actually give back to the country and support it and keep it safe. I took my mechanical engineering degree and I applied it to, my first job was building satellites. My next job was actually going to the Hill, working on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, and then into this wonderful agency called NGA, where I'll just briefly talk about it for a second. We have a mission that's both in the intelligence community as well as in the Department of Defense. We essentially take the satellite imagery and airborne imagery and keep an eye on what's happening all over the world so that we can report back to policymakers, Department of Defense and warfighters, as well as humanitarian missions in supporting natural disasters. So stumbled into a great mission and I haven't looked back ever since.
Oh, that is absolutely wonderful. And, as I listen to all of you women so far, it's funny how I look at my own career and I realize, oh, we have something, a bit, how we got there and what we've been doing, because I've been fortunate and, I did the government thing too after military, so again, that career, but listening to you, it seems like how much it intertwines with how we got to where we're going. As we were talking about, giving back and working within, say, being a public servant, I think it's a great segue into our next question. And it's around this historic year that we had, even though we come from, last year where most of our thoughts were on the pandemic. And, it was a lot of negative things going on, just a lot of negativity in the world. But also there's a lot of push forward, and some positive changes happening. And one of the things we had earlier this year, which was Kamala Harris taking over as Vice President of the United States of America, as a woman, as a African American, the Asian aspect of it. I mean, what a wonderful time we're living in that we actually saw it, and in our lifetime, we've actually seen too, Barack Obama being president, so as we look at Kamala Harris, how do you feel, and I'm going to address this one, I think, to Donna first, is how do you feel, being a woman in cyber or STEM during this historic time?
So first, thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this esteemed panel. So I'll just say one or two words that go along with that. Really excited as well as elated. So I always like to share this story. Several years ago, before we had Vice President Kamala Harris, I was sharing with people that she was going to be our next president. And I remember someone came into my office and they were like, who is this person? And I gave a little bit of background. And why I raised that is because when I think about Kamala Harris, our vice president, I think about elements of self-advocacy. And so when I indicate that, when we think about political parties and the party process, a lot of times people will tell you, and even in the private sector, there is a time for certain people to be in certain roles and you have to kind of wait your turn. I'll say the same thing about President Barack Obama. There was also, and I hail from the South, I can recall very vividly certain family members during that period of time, exception of my mother and father, who were very supportive of President Obama during the time when he was trying to get the nomination. And people were indicating that this just was not his time. It was time for Hillary Clinton. And why I say that is because these two individuals stretched and they advocated for themselves. They knew it was the time for them to ultimately step out as well as take action. And I often question, if she did not step out in terms of running for the president, would she be our vice president currently? But one of the things that I say when we talk about being in a leadership role presently and at a time in this particular industry with Vice President Kamala Harris, I always like for people to kind of go where we went earlier with the questions. It's about a position, but it's really about the journey of getting there. So what is so critical for me when we talk about a person that's in a leadership role is to really being able to understand the path that they ultimately followed in order to get there. When I think about her illustrious background and her history, from the support of her family, community, levels of focus and determination, Howard University, when I think about historically Black colleges and universities and the support systems and the networking that is available in that particular structure. So it is very representative of what I would say is the possibilities for us. For young women, it represents an opportunity to see someone who is like them, who may have gone through similar situations, but some of the realities that continue to exist is that you have to be diligent, you have to be prepared, you have to be focused, you have to be your own self-advocate, and opportunities will present themselves. And in many instances, we do not always chart that particular direct path, but different opportunities do avail themselves, and we have to be willing to walk through those particular doors that do open for us. So thank you.
Oh, you said a lot there that was wonderful to hear. Talking about self-advocacy and, being about the journey, right? We, as we said, as we've been talking about already, we don't know what the future holds, but it's taking that chance and embracing that journey that you're talking about, but also self-advocating for yourself. And one of the things with Kamala Harris, Vice President, is that she did it with grace. Yeah. She did it in such a way that people took notice. I think what you said, you thought she'd be the next president and other people thought she was maybe an underdog. But she proved herself, and people took notice of that. And I think that's very important in how she got here, got to this position today. Dr. Joy, I'd like to ask you sort of how you're feeling in this. Your field's a bit different and in education. So I'd like to hear your take on this being a woman in leadership and STEM, with Kamala Harris now as Vice President.
This is really, first of all, I want to say it is an honor to be with everyone. And this is truly a Women's History Month. I've been really looking forward to the journey, and I'm looking forward to our conversation tonight. This is a historical time in all of our lives. I'm actually one of the civil rights leaders behind Selma. And we use all of our skills and to really make a difference and to talk to the elders to find out what was important to them. And so when you look at where we've been and where we are now, and I look at where I am in my life, I get it. My life is God driven. And each day I always ask, how can I serve you? And that is the way I live my life. When you look at all the different changes, particularly with this, Michelle talked about it earlier, the challenges that are happening as a result of education and COVID, and how some students are being left behind while others are still are deciding if they're going to disengage. Several years ago, I actually started Legacy Bridges STEM Academy, and it is a 501c3 NASA Legend and Trailblazers Institute. And my goal and my passion is to work with living legends and to help transfer the knowledge to multiple generations. When I first went to NASA, I fell in love with the astronauts, because I kept saying, we've got to find something where we can have world peace when everybody would agree, and that it's okay for me to talk about God. So when I was in the different fields or doing leadership training, and I would bring up, spirituality in my training, they used to say, oh, you can't say that. And I would go, okay, but you're in your executive chair because God put you there. And so as I look at my journey, I found working with the astronauts, and the things that are in common is that no matter what goes on in the world, everyone learns to be one team, because it depends on working together as a team that will affect if we will be successful in our journey, on a national and global level. And when you look at the history that has been made now, it is really, it's perfect timing, because the courage, the leadership, the integrity, all of those key values play a role. And I'm just so happy to be a woman in this time. Most of the time, I'm the only one in the room. And I've always been a strong advocate for diversity and inclusion. So with all of the challenges that are happening, as we begin and work through these conversations, we can look at models that will support all of our leadership, as well as to make sure that we mentor young women in the process in cybersecurity, the NASA, the intelligence, industry. And so I'm proud of that.
You said a lot of very important things there. And I think 3 key words I took away was courage, leadership, and integrity. I did want to ask you just real quick, Dr. Joy, I heard someone talking about, how they learn to be a leader versus being a team of one, and they use NASA as an example. NASA has a test out there that they give you, and they give you, like, you're stranded on the moon or, somewhere out in space, and they give you a list of 10 things and have you decide what would you take to survive, and they give you a chance to do it individually, but then as a team. Did you get a chance to partake in that test with a group at NASA?
No, I haven't. I do know what you're talking about. I will tell you that I've had the pleasure of working. I've had the pleasure of working with Mrs. Katherine Johnson's family, and as well as been in conversation with Katherine Johnson. And one of the things that she said, she was so modest when, she did not realize that Hidden Figures was going to take off the way it did. And when you talked to her, she said, I was just doing my job. And when you look at doing something individually and doing something with teams, the whole team approach helps create innovation, and we learn from one another. And as we begin to journey or, understand our Earth and learn about the solar system, it's important for us to discover, one, what's in our own values, and number 2 is how can we work together. So no, I haven't taken that test, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm more on the aerospace, on the more aerospace side now, and we'll begin to work with satellites. But I just recently became a NASA Globe partner, and we're going to be studying the environment. And my goal is to increase more diversity and inclusion to help grow scientists, young scientists.
Oh, excellent. I think
I'll take that test.
I don't think you'll have any problem passing it, because you already talk about teamwork, right? And it's not about everybody agreeing. It's about coming to a consensus. So I have no doubt that you'll do well on that test, but it will be a fun activity to do, to see how you guys come to a consensus and how to survive together. So I'm going to follow up with you on that and see if you ever get the chance to do that.
I have to tell you, all the men in my family are veterans, and one of the things that we're very focused on, all of my team are veterans, and so my whole life is devoted on that. And on March which makes this so special, come May the 15th, the Arms Task Force Day was just created. And so NASA got her. All of us are going to be leading, because I always say, if you want to know about strategy, I always say, I got to turn to my military and veterans partners. So I'm glad that you're here, and it's great. So congratulations on your continued success too.
Oh, thank you. I am going to say something, ladies, if you give me the chance to, understand. I'm just going to step away for a second and say HUA, because I am Army, and the veteran side of it. You can't, every time I hear Army, I want to say HUA, because it is a part of how I developed. And, from a young person graduating high school, going straight into the military, it had a very big influence on the path of my life. So I couldn't resist saying that.
Well, they have a lot of scholarships out there now that, I was like, wow. I tell my kids, wow, because I'm mentoring 30 students, but my number one is she just graduated from Lincoln on the dean's list, double major, and going to Georgia Tech. So she's studying aerospace engineer. So that she's my pride and joy. But now she said, I think I want to go to the military. I was like, yeah, that might be a good thing to do. So
it would be, especially we now have a Space Force is going to come to fruition, as far as I know. Looking at that, I know even with who I work with, we're looking at offices and close to the location, because that's happening. Who would have thought, even a year or two ago, that we would actually have something called the Space Force, right? And Stacey, I'm pretty sure you know a bit about that. And how surprised were you with when they announced the Space Force?
I can't say that I was surprised. It's certainly, in watching the growth in the mission in space, not only what we can learn about space, but what space does for us. Space is part of our economy. Space is part of our understanding of the world and our security. So it is sort of logical that it created a Space Force, and they've already proven to be great partners. So we work very closely with them at my agency.
Oh, yes. Very good. So going to take just a turn as I'm looking, and I'm enjoying hearing everything. So I'm also looking at, we got some more questions to get through, and we can circle back at the end. But I want to, we talked about this year and coming out of last year. So I wanted to pose to you, what are unique challenges as a woman, and it's not just in leadership and business, but it's in our families, during the pandemic, with the frontline workers, being also primary caregivers, maybe for older relatives, as well as, children, that education piece coming in there too, trying to balance that entire workload, putting it all together and staying strong and but also not just staying strong, kind of have to be that face of like, everything's going to be okay, even when you might be worried a little bit. So I want to ask you, Michelle, what are your thoughts on that, the unique challenges faced this past year?
Well, I think that many women are in so many different types of situations. And one thing that we just needed to open our eyes to over the past year was just how different each of our families may be. Some people had a lot of people that they needed to take care of, and so it created a different burden for them professionally and personally. But then there were others who were just thrust into loneliness, who we really needed to watch out for. There were so many people whose social lives and just day-to-day activities with other people were just taken from them, and they live alone. So there were so many who were in isolation, both young people and elderly people and everyone in between. So I think that last year we all had to work through our own particular challenges. And I think that after we sort of got our feet under us after a few months, then we really started to look out for other people. And I don't know whether that's just part of being a caretaker and being a woman and a mom and having those sorts of qualities. But I really think one positive thing that came out of the last year was that we started to give each other more grace, and we started to look out for each other a bit more. And I hope that's something that we can continue after the pandemic.
That is absolutely correct. I think you're right. It gave you a different way to think about people, right? And those that you do encounter. And I feel that I don't know if you sensed it, but there was actually people were genuinely asking how you were doing, and it made such a difference to people. How was it at work, at Verizon? I know there's thousands and thousands of employees. How did it impact, just with how you did daily work, going remote, still having people in, also needing to be, still being outside, going to residences, making everything is, make sure everything is staying up and running?
It was really difficult. And I think our leadership really stepped up. We started to have daily noontime broadcasts where our CEO and senior leaders would speak to us on a daily basis. And they would talk to us about what leadership was doing, how they were trying to take care of us, our employees, our customers, and all of the stakeholders that Verizon touches. You're right. We have over 130,000 employees, so and all different sorts of jobs. And so there were so many different scenarios that needed to be cared for. And not only that, Verizon really stepped up when talking about these social issues. The George Floyd murder last year had us reeling. I mean, I think that everyone on this panel can say that we were not going to work as our normal selves in the week and the month after that happened. We were emotionally drained. We were tired. We were upset. And Verizon really gave us space to talk about these issues and to not become teachers for our other colleagues. I don't have time to do my job and teach everyone else how to be anti-racist. So Verizon took that upon themselves. They came out with wonderful toolkits. They hosted discussions. And I really feel like as an employer, they set an example and were really great at making sure that we were cared for when there were so many difficult things going on in our country last year. And they've continued that. The recent tragedy with the Asian women in Georgia, they've stepped up, and we are talking about that. We are donating money. We are trying to care for our Asian American employees. And I think it's really started something that I hope is something else that continues, where we really start to care for people and their differences when we have these horrible acts of hate that happen in this country.
Yeah. And I think, with that dialogue that it opened up, I know from the human resources side wasn't always the right way to start the dialogues on some of the conversations I heard, but I think people were trying to be open and honest, right? And others are trying to learn. And I am with you on that and trying to move that forward. Let's not stop. I think, as Dr. Joy talked about, back with Selma and the civil rights movement, right? A lot of these things that we are talking about, last year, unfortunately, a man lost his life to bring it to such the forefront for there to be, to become a topic again that, no matter where you went, there's a topic, and, put race right out there, as a topic, is that we don't want that to fall off the radar, right? We don't want it, to be a year down the road, and next thing you know, they're like, George Floyd who, and I think it's that consistency that we need to have those balanced conversations. And Donna, I was going to ask you, from another major business, Pepco, sort of, how was it for you and your company during this time?
So I'll say this, when you think about our industry is definitely on the front lines 24 hours a day, even when it's not a pandemic or a major emergency. So we had to transition very quickly to virtual operations, but also the reality is that our crews had to be in the public space still yet 24 hours a day. So now you're talking about people working from home, students who are being taught from home. There is a shift in dynamic as it relates to the energy system versus the downtown type footprint within our respective areas and the cities we operate, where people were there for office and work. Now they're in their homes doing it. So we had major infrastructure projects that we were advancing prior to the pandemic. We have the Capital Grid project where we were upgrading infrastructure. We had major grid modernization initiatives that were moving forward with the whole issues around climate change, electrification as it relates to the transportation sector. And we're a regulated entity. It's like, how do you consistently continue to deliver at the levels that you need to deliver, and ultimately kind of transition within that process as well? Then the other piece, people are challenged. Look how many people have lost their careers, lost their jobs. People cannot pay their bills. We were one of the first utilities locally to move forward with ensuring that we were not disconnecting customers, definitely waiving any type of late fees, really telling our customers that we could meet them exactly where they are. So it was just a lot just in terms of ensuring that our customers knew that we were here to support. But one of the things I always say about our industry, we have a core mission, which is to deliver safe, reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy. But we've been operating in this region for over a century, and our work goes beyond that core mission. There's a lot that we do in terms of community. So we provided assistance with grants for small businesses, focusing largely on minorities, scholarships for students who were in our community colleges, still yet continuing our infrastructure academy program, which is in partnership with the District of Columbia government, contending with our STEM academies that we're operating for young women. So it's like, how do we just convert all of these things virtually to deliver real value for our customers and the communities that we serve? And going back to what you talked about regarding the issue of this racial injustice, growing up from the South, from the time I was probably 1 or 2 years of age, I was sitting at a table with my father as well as my mother, learning the history. My dad was a person who was a leader in our community around civil rights. So this was not something new. As someone said earlier, it was magnified again, that this is an issue that we're continuing to contend with in our society. And for us, we made a major statement, but more importantly, you mentioned sustainability. We have established a racial equity task force within our particular company. We've always had employee resource groups, but it's like, how do we utilize our particular resources, that's financial influence with others as well, to really drive positive change? When we talk about women, you're talking about since February of 2020, over 5 million women have actually left the labor force. When you look at December, if I can recall, of 2020, when they were looking at the data with the labor statistics, I think we lost another 150,000, where men gained 16,000 jobs. So when I talk about that, there is a huge element here that, as you indicated, is affecting women in many respects, because we ultimately are on the front lines. We are the caregivers, the supporters as it relates to our families, our children. And so it has impacted us in a very interesting way. And more importantly, the type of careers and jobs that we have. So I think it opens up the door and the window to think a lot more strategically about resiliency as well as equity and inclusion. And I always say this about African American women: all women are not treated equal and not looked at equally. There's an issue of intersectionality, and you see this when you look at the issue of African American women versus Asian versus white women, and how do you close these particular gaps that are in our system. And so some of the things that we're doing is really focusing on African American leadership. She mentioned Asian Americans as well, but how do we close some of these gaps in terms of succession within our particular corporations, opportunities for individuals to get into positions that historically you've had those particular divides and gaps. And the reality is that we have to be very intentional and purposeful to actually drive the change, because unfortunately it's not going to happen organically. So thank you.
And you, both you and Donna, helped lead into some other questions, because even as you're saying that and closing the gap, or what we can do for women, is, looking at sort of about increasing, training and job opportunities, right? So I would like to ask Stacy sort of, what are your thoughts, or what are you doing? I know working, sort of in guides with increasing like cyber training or job opportunities in your organization for women.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that question. It's interesting. One of the things that I love to tell people is that if you major in a STEM subject, you will always have opportunities. You will always be able to fall back on that, even if you choose later in life not to actually use that particular degree. It teaches you how to think. It teaches you how to, figure out how to solve problems, whether they're technical problems or other kinds of problems. Usually puts you in a position where you need to work with teams, and so you get that teamwork experience. Within the federal government, there are a lot of opportunities to not only get your degree paid for. Once you actually graduate from school, from college, and start in the government, you can actually get the degree paid for, reimbursed. There are also many fellowship programs for when you're actually in school that you should look at that the government has to include within cybersecurity. Within the national security space, the National Security Agency has a very nice fellowship program that they have that we are also part of. We also provide training once you've come into the government if you want to go back and get a degree, whether you want to get a master's degree or get a PhD. And we are encouraging those, especially in the STEM field. So there's a lot of focus and attention right now, recognizing that we're not producing within this country enough of U.S. citizens in particular that are actually in STEM. And yet the number of jobs that are needed, whether in cybersecurity, whether in data science, in artificial intelligence, coding, programming, IT writ large, there's just not enough people being produced through the universities with these degrees. And so we certainly prioritize hiring right now many people who have a STEM background, and will help others who don't have one, who want to get one later on, do that as well. So look at the government for opportunities to be able to do that. They're open to all of our workforce. So we aren't necessarily prioritizing them for women over men. However, we're certainly encouraging those who want to, and with the women in our workforce are certainly have access to all of these opportunities as well.
Well, excellent. And I think, Michelle, we do have a question here for somebody. I believe his name is Charles. What opportunities, and this is for, and this is actually for you, for Verizon. So he wants to know what opportunities exist for minority cyber training groups to partner with Verizon to deliver cyber training to a large number of people.
Well, when you say cyber training, I'm not exactly sure what he means. We do have programs where there are Verizon employees where you can, if you are a Verizon employee, there are tuition reimbursement programs. We also have partnerships throughout the country with organizations like STEM4US, where there are local grants and fellowships available through these sorts of partnerships. So I would encourage whoever answered that question to see if, I'm not sure where they are, but I could possibly answer offline later, depending on what region they're in and what resources we may have in that area.
Okay, well, thank you. So I do encourage you, Charles, if you have some contact information or way we can reach you and, maybe get with you offline to better answer your question. And looking here, he did reply back. He said he's a cyber training company. So I think what he's looking for is to provide training to employees in the STEM area, in the cyber and STEM area.
I'm on LinkedIn, and I encourage Charles to reach out.
Awesome. So Charles, we'll hopefully get your information and connect you with Michelle to further that discussion. Charlene, I'd like to ask you the same question, working, with Congress and, sort of what, and also having constituents, you have to answer to. What are some of the things you're doing in relation to STEM and cyber training or some of the initiatives?
Absolutely. I think one of the best things about working for Congresswoman Clark is not only is she on Homeland Security, she's also on the Energy and Commerce Committee. And so she always talks about the 21st century workforce and why it's important for Black and Brown people to be a part of that workforce, whether it's broadband infrastructure, whether it's new media and media content. The Congresswoman has 2 congressional caucuses that she co-chairs and also founded. One is the Multicultural Media Caucus. And that caucus is, she has 2 co-chairs, Congressman Tony Cartness and Congresswoman Judy Chu, both from California. And it's just to talk about the importance of multicultural media content and about how technology can be used in regards to that content. And then also she is co-chair and founder of the Smart Cities Caucus. And that's a lot of where her cybersecurity is honed in. So that caucus, she actually has a Republican counterpart, Congressman Darrell Issa, and it's 4 pillars of that caucus. And the first one is connectivity. So connectivity, mobility when it comes to transportation, sustainability when it comes to energy and electrification, and then also workforce development. So a lot of her cyber work is going to come in regards to protecting our cities, protecting our municipalities, protecting federal agencies. And, you know, how can we do that and make sure that things like the solar winds attack doesn't happen again, or that cities aren't held for ransom. In addition to that, workforce development. How do we get people that look like us into workforce dealing with cybersecurity? So is it a matter of grants and putting more money towards certain programs for HBCU students, our HSI students? Is it a matter of just encouraging companies and industry to create programs, corporate social responsibility programs and pipeline programs for people that look like us when it comes to cybersecurity? And also for universities, it's not just about a 4-year degree. A lot of universities and community colleges have certifications, and that's another way that we can get involved in it. So, you know, one of the best things I say about working for her is everything that she works for and what her mission is aligns with mine. And as a Black woman, and at the time I started working for her, she was the only Black female member on the Energy and Commerce Committee. She's representing and making sure we're doing all that we can do for the cyber workforce to look like us.
You know, that's wonderful. And I think you actually, you know, one of the questions we have coming up, and I think you already led us sort of towards that, is, you know, sort of aligning ourselves and who we work for and who we represent, right? I think that's very important, what you have there. So hopefully we'll get to follow up on that. But some of the things you said, I definitely agree with the cyber training. Those certificates are very important. I know it's something, you know, sometimes even working with the government, we say, get those certifications, you know, sometimes even before you get the higher degree. You know, if you have your degree, you have the bachelor's, get those certifications, because it makes you much more marketable now, because those certs are very important. You know, don't shy away from those, you know. And I think the government does a great job in that, in looking, and how you said, it's not always about the degree. It's about your experience, what you bring to the table, and certifications can help also propel you, you know, through your career. So Dr. Joy, when it comes to you, you know, with your organization, I think this one is right up your alley, but, you know, getting into your career and then looking at how you help shape maybe others, mentoring and what that means for you and how you got to where you are today, but also for the future and what you do to encourage others.
Well, I have to tell you that I've been blessed to have mentors all my life. And when I was in 10th grade, I've been in college since 7th grade. And so when it came to 12th grade, I didn't go to 12th grade. I went right into college and articulated into college, Community College of Philadelphia. And when I look back over my career, I've always been mentored, and I've also am a mentor, and it's really critical. And I always tell people I'm proud of being a baby boomer. And when I said to people that I'm going into NASA, and I don't know what I know that I don't know what I don't know, but I do know that it's one of the passions that I have. And I believe where I'm at right now is because I had mentors during my journey. When I did a training actually for BEA, when BEA came to Philadelphia, they had asked me to serve on the host committee and to design a pre-college to college, you know, career pathways, and bring all the workshops together. So I did NASA Legends and the Trailblazers. I work with the astronauts and the Tuskegee Airmen. I work closely with them today, and the sports legends. And what we came out of that was the students were really interested, and it started to get them thinking. And I'm going to go back to something that Stacy said, and it's critical. One of the challenges that we have is that if you look at the high-tech jobs and you look at government, because I'm a contractor now for NIH, the National Institute of Health, and I design training programs for scientists and grant program administrators. It is critical to know the how to think, the teamwork, the critical skills that you need from a scientific level, regardless of what industry that you're in. And so how are we able to be successful? Team of teams. We have to mentor those that become, behind us. And then we also have to seek out mentors in the process. Where we're moving very rapidly is all high tech. You go back to what you're talking about, the smart cities, energy, commerce. It's critical that we look at how we can work together, leverage our talents, and be able to, one, serve as mentors to one another, because this cyber security issue and the COVID issue goes back to what Michelle said. It has started to open our eyes that we need each other. We need each other in our personal lives, in our family lives, and in our career lives for balance. So that mentorship is critical. And I'd like to ask everybody tonight to think about all the talent that we have on the table. It would be great to do a pilot program for women with STEM4US. I'm one of the board members, and so with strategic partnership, so I need to put that out there. But the mentorship is important. I would not have made it this far in this career, in my career, if I did not have mentors. And there's sometimes I have to tell you, I wanted to quit. I said, I don't know what I'm doing. But then someone said, well, let me help you. And then the younger kids would say to me, well, Dr. Joy, if you quit, who's going to help us? And I'll be like, yeah, you're right. Let me get back in this fight. So the mentorship is really important, particularly one of the things I will say this. I work with the oldest is my mentor, is Wally Jones' father, 104. And he says to me, Dr. Joy, do me a big favor. I said, well, what's that, sir? I love you dearly, but I do not need you to hold my arm. I know how to walk myself. I say, yes, sir. And so on his 100th birthday, we gave him Yoda, and Yoda is right now aboard the International Space Station with astronaut Victor Glover, right? And then the Tuskegee Airmen, what's important to them is they want to share their knowledge, but they want their stories to be told accurately. And so that's what we're looking at, is how do we transfer that knowledge to the next generation, work together to build off of the technical side, and then share that as we grow in the cybersecurity and, in the industry. And it's most important to always remember, and Michelle, really want to commend Verizon. When corporations have honest, authentic conversations past the employee resource groups where you can talk about racial equity and then invest in the communities, that is what corporate responsibility looks like. So I just want to say that, kudos to you and Verizon for what you do.
Yeah. And we recognized a couple of years ago that one of our key stakeholders is society. It's not just the shareholders. It's not just our customers. It is society as a whole. And it's similar to Donna's business. We touch everybody. We touch so many lives, not only through the services that we offer, but the fact that we have employees all over the place. And so we just can't take a blind eye to being in those communities and not actively engaging with the communities. So it's something that Verizon takes very seriously, and we have our hand in all sorts of issues that people may not even expect. I actually am actively litigating a pro bono case for a criminal justice reform issue right now. And we have a pro bono program where we work on expungements, and we are spreading our tentacles in ways that are unexpected. But I think it's important for corporations to show up like that, because we have resources, we have a voice, and we can set an example.
That's awesome. And that's what we need in the community.
And Donna, I wanted to ask you, sort of same, like, in your life and mentoring, but also does PEPCO have sort of a mentoring program for employees?
Yes, most definitely. So mentoring is so critical and important. And I also like to use the terminology as well of having champions. And I have a separation between a mentor as well as a champion. So we have formal programs. I would say that I would not be in the position that I am in if I didn't have a champion. And why I say that is several years ago, once again, I'm a person who would not have thought that I would be in the utility industry 12 years ago. And why I say 12 years ago is that's when I came into the industry. And some people said that when I came into the industry, I regressed from the position that I was in previously. I came in as a senior public affairs manager. I wanted a change. I wanted to get into the industry. I worked very thoughtfully in partnership, collaboratively, was given multiple opportunities to drive real outcomes for individuals within our communities. And for me, I'm a service-oriented person, and that's the connectivity to me with our industry. And when it came to mentoring and championing, when this position became available, because I moved up through a series of positions within the company, the person who was the president at the time asked me, and he's an African-American male, whether or not I was going to apply for the position because he was moving into the holding company side of the position, the company. I said, no, I was not planning on applying. And he says, if I were you, I would at least give it a try, because there were other variables as to why. It's not that I couldn't do the job, but there was another reason that I was not contemplating doing it. And if he had not just had that conversation with me, this would not have even occurred. For me, it's about really supporting those that come behind us. When I think about mentorship as well as sponsorship with our company, we have an African American Leadership Council within our corporation. We are part of Exelon Corporation. We operate out of Chicago. We operate out of Philadelphia. We operate out of Baltimore, New Jersey, Delaware. We're one of the largest electric utility companies in the nation, operating on the generation as well as the delivery side. And when I throw that out there, I put it out there because we're working hard as a corporation and as the African Americans within our company to make certain that we're creating that pipeline for others to realistically come behind us. We're positioned in certain roles, but we're at the table, and how do we drive that change? So we have formal mentorship programs. I know I mentor a lot of people on an informal side. We have conversations. You mentioned earlier, Michelle, we have an open space where our employees can talk, can be themselves. It's a safe space. It's an environment that encourages that. Just today, I am the executive sponsor of the network of Exelon Women. And we have a series of talks and conversations. If you can hear what is even being shared and discussed within that particular space, and women as well as men supporting each other through this process. When we're looking at succession planning, when we're looking at creating opportunities for individuals to even have an entry point into our industry, to think about how are our slates, who are making the decisions, who's on that particular board, and really breaking down those particular barriers sometimes that have continued to actually exist, and realizing that there are other things that we have to do collaboratively to drive that particular change. So I'll just share mentoring programs that support STEM. We have a program known as our Guiding Light Leadership Program that's going on right now with high school seniors. And one of the things I talk about, there's a technical side, obviously, to them, but our program is about exposing our younger generation to the fact of how diverse our industry realistically is. Because people think of the engineers, the poles, the wires, the modernization pieces, and all of that is there. But we have attorneys, we have a communications division, we have economists. So you have to think about the opportunities that exist on a much wider scale, but youth will not know about it unless we do the things to realistically expose them to it. So thank you.
And I think, as I'm looking at the time, ladies, I think we're getting close to the end. It's hard to believe, sort of this hour and a half went quickly, didn't it? And I know we can extend this conversation on. I've quite enjoyed it. Hearing each of you and your individual opinions, but also how similar paths are, right? And just a genuine support of each of you on this panel for one another as well. I do want to just say real quick, I see someone out there, it must be a former Marine. He says Semper Fi, so, we're glad that he was able to join. I think, right, and they also said, thank you for sharing your experiences. I think this has been wonderful. I'm going to get ready to turn it over to Talib and David Owens, but I want to thank you all for allowing me to help stir this conversation amongst us. And all of your remarks and everything was great. It's for the youth, for those looking for becoming leaders, for those who are thinking about what their next step will be because of changes in the world today. I think that you've imparted a lot of knowledge, and I appreciate being able to spend this time with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
This is wonderful.
You've been an excellent moderator.
Yes, we have.
Well, thank you. The STEAM panel, you made it quite easy. So thank you.
I hope we all keep working together.
Oh, absolutely. And I believe Talib had just joined us, so I'll turn it over to him.
Well,
thank you, Talib.
Well, I appreciate you, and it was an awesome conversation. I saw one question you didn't get a chance to answer, but we'll make sure that the representatives from Verizon and Pepco get a chance to take a crack at that and give it back. Again, on behalf of STEM4US, we want to express our note of appreciation to everyone. Michelle, you and Verizon support, really appreciate you. Donna Cooper, one of our longest standing supporters and sponsors, really appreciate you. Charlotte Stansbury, again, young lady who I literally saw come up the ranks, and she really did shoot up those ranks, honestly. Again, kudos to you and the Congresswoman for whom you represent so well. And again, Dr. Stacy Dixon, amazing work that you all are doing. We certainly, my father was one of the people who used to be surveilled. And so knowing as a civil rights worker, and so knowing that we have people who are like you, who we've seen and we've gotten to know, I feel a little bit better about those agencies. So again, really appreciate you, and of course, Dr. Joy. You are really a bundle of joy to the STEM4US and our organization, and we really appreciate you again. And we are grateful that we have come to the end, and we have our chairman who's waiting in the wings. So we will again bring him on. But before we do, and give him the floor, I do want to say that Michelle, the person that I remember from Hogan and Hartson, it used to be Hogan Hartson, Hogan and Levis, is Michelle Farquhar, your namesake, Michelle Farquhar.
Yes, I should have read that too.
Absolutely. And I'll say this before I leave. Do you know my first contract as a lawyer, my first contract with a large corporation came as a result of the mentorship that, again, this woman provided for me. Again, I'm a young African-American lawyer starting his legal career, starting his law practice. And I was able to establish a relationship with this senior lawyer who was not just any senior lawyer, but the former bureau chief of the Wireline Bureau of the Federal Communications Commission, or Wireless Bureau, I think, of the Federal Communications Commission. And she was able to take me under her wings, and we pitched Black entertainment television for a contract. And we're given the contract only really because I had that relationship. So again, this issue of mentorship really cannot be overstated. So again, we really appreciate you sisters doing a wonderful job at spreading the word of mentorship. So again, have a wonderful night, and we look forward to having more good conversations with you all in the days to come.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
So as we get ready to transition here, we have again David Owens, our chairman, to join us and give us some closing remarks. David, we see your icon.
I think
There you go.
I think it's just you and I. I think everybody left.
Absolutely. You and I and all the millions of people who are listening to us.
Okay. Well, I thought it was an awesome discussion, and I really enjoyed it. And what it brought out to me, I mean, I'm a product. My core values really come from my mother and grandmother, who really mentored me and loved me and focused me and supported me and were leaders for me. But I listened to these awesome women tonight, and what really struck me was it was a dichotomy of how society views our African American women, our women of color. We're in an environment today with white supremacy and so forth, and they certainly did not sound like angry Black women to me. Okay, they impart a lot of wisdom, a lot of experience, a lot of sensitivity, a lot of support for giving back to the community. And I just applaud their leadership, their strong commitment, and their passion for the work that they're doing. So I really enjoyed it. I'm sure all the audience enjoyed it as well. I thought it was an awesome dialogue, and I appreciate this opportunity to have listened to it. And I certainly do appreciate the outstanding work of STEM4US. Talib, I think you're an awesome leader, and I think you're creating some tremendous dialogues to educate us, to empower us, to make some significant changes in our society. What I always say when I'm on a call with Talib is that I'm a very spiritual man, and I would just say to all of you who are still listening that God bless you, and please remain safe and well and remain positive. And thank you for this opportunity. Good night.
Again, David, we really appreciate you as the chairman of our board taking your time, as you often do, for not only us, but the other nonprofit organizations for which you serve, and the organizations that you help to lead in your retirement. You say you retired, but I mean the type of work that you do nonstop on behalf of us and also the people of Puerto Rico who so benefit from your work as the chairman of the regulatory agency that keeps their power on. Really, you are a blessing for us all. So we really want you to know how grateful we are for you taking your time. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention all of our partners. Again, we have Verizon, you, David, Abe Legal. We have outstanding partners that include also the National African American Drug Policy Coalition, Legacy Bridge STEM Academy, Cyber Training Group International, the Brooks and Associates Global Learning Services, the McCain Group, Mission to Change, Colonel Walter Ingram, Stan Bennett, Daryl Horton, Jesse Wimbish, Margaret Tyus, Andrew Holloway, Ernest Stewart, Jeffrey Harrison, James Kerr, Dr. Nicole Cranston, the African Housing Equity Fund, American Association of Black Energy, Davis Dance Studio, Digitized Learning, Honorable Martavius Jones with the Memphis City Council. My father used to serve on the council as an at-large member. Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Eastern Province, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Hyattsville Landover, Maryland Alumni Chapter. That's my own chapter. The Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Gaithersburg Rockville Alumni Chapter. Fatima Iqbal Zubair, Perry Paler, Deputy State's Attorney for Prince George's County, and the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation. We appreciate each and every one of you all for lending us your time and your money. Of course, we appreciate our outstanding moderator, Sharifa Masson, who did an amazing job. And we appreciate the support of all those people who we didn't mention, who are really the backbone of STEM4US, and all the parents and the educators for whom we serve. We look forward to coming back to you next week, hopefully, with another exciting conversation in our STEM4US podcast. And until that time, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to throw them in the comment or the question section. You can also get in contact with us at stem4us.org. Again, We pray that the Almighty watches over each and every one of us. And again, have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Good night.